For several years, I've had this unarticulated thought that if you zoom in close enough, Google Earth is actually pretty compelling and interesting as art. I would almost say that it's sort of its own form of art, similar to a movement of art like cubism or pointillism or expressionism. Only this form was not developed by human artists exactly, at least not deliberately. Instead, this style emerged due to technological limitations that will soon disappear. And when that happens, I think we'll lose something. Something that will look beautiful to us in retrospect. To understand what I mean, take a look at this representation of Copacabana Beach in Brazil. The limits of satellite image resolution combined with the imperfections and glitches inherent to current-day photogrammetry result in an image that's abstracted in a way that fans of Gustav Klimt or even Ellsworth Kelly might appreciate. Or how about this close-up of a forest in Colorado? This is like a painting that lives secretly outside the purview of museum curators and gallerists, even the ones that are looking for the next Jackson Pollock. A lot of Google Earth imagery is less obviously beautiful, like this tangle of highways in Milwaukee. But study these surfaces and you'll see ghostly textures and painterly strokes, juxtaposed with unnaturally hard edges, like a mixed media collage lost in a soup of time and space. I think for humanity there is often a lot of poetry to be found in the revealing seams that cause our perfect illusions to break apart. As Leonard Cohen sings, "There's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in." But this dock in Barcelona, or maybe even more so this close-up of a favela in Rio in Brazil, really feels representative of the most brutal aesthetic inherent to Google Earth. Most people would call this ugly or classify it as some kind of failure, but sometimes in art, ugly failures are where it's at. Sometimes it's as if the whole world is covered in drapery with itself printed on it, like in this shot from Coney Island. Now you might say this just looks like any low-quality video game, but let me counter that by saying that today's low-quality video game is tomorrow's art you'll have nostalgia for. These kinds of technical limitations become signs of quality even with time. Just think about our preference for the warmth of vinyl records with their crackle and pops, or the hiss of audio tape and VHS, or even the sounds of vintage analog instruments. Or how we fetishize the grain of film in contrast to more perfect digital images. In a few years, when digital map views like this just look perfect and exactly like the real world, I'm gonna miss this charming mess. After all, when something isn't a perfect representation, in a way that's another way of saying that it's an abstraction. And to me, abstraction is where most interesting art begins. Any visible brushstroke is, in a way, a failure to capture reality as it is. A brushstroke is a technological limitation standing in the way of photorealism. And we like it standing there because very often photorealism is boring and uninteresting. When something is instead captured through an imperfect method, it allows us to see it anew. In a world crowded with a gajillion megapixel cameras in everyone's pockets, and AI image generators increasingly capable of and tending towards photorealism, I favor the abstract. And while I'll always prefer an abstraction labored over by a human artist with groundbreaking ideas, there's something nice too about machine artifacts that show limits rather than this ceaseless ascent towards so-called perfection. It's interesting to me that something so digital like this will, with time, I think, look decidedly human. By the way, I know many people in my audience absolutely hate AI, and I have many reservations about it myself. But if you want to explore this kind of aesthetic in your own work, there is an AI tool called Genie by lumalabs.ai that will generate terrible 3D models for you based on a text prompt. And these models can be exported to Blender or whatever 3D application you want. Here's what it gives me if I type in an expensive sports car, for example. Or how about a pair of fashionable high heels? I mean, this is really something. You can sometimes get this tool to generate better models, but remember, better is engineer speak for less interesting and more derivative. Anyway, I don't know how you might take something like this and elevate it to be art, but I think it'll have to do with what context you place it in as a designer or as an artist. You could always ask Duchamp, I guess, to see if he has any ideas. Although he hasn't called me back. I'm actually playing around with this tool right now. I'm trying to put together a funny and weird video about it. So if I succeed at that, look out for that video on this channel quite soon. I'll leave you with some more cool shots I grabbed from Google Earth while telling you that I make videos every week for creative people of all stripes. I talk about art and design and animation and culture and creative entrepreneurship and basically anything you'd find in the arts and culture section of a major newspaper. So if that sounds kind of nice to you, please subscribe and hit that like button because it does help YouTube realize that maybe some other people would like to watch this stuff too, and it helps the channel grow whether YouTube likes it or not. So thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here, whoever and wherever you are, and I'll see you next week.